When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with another, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As the Revolutionary War enters its 5th year, British armies occupy New York City and large portions of Georgia and North and South Carolina. Along the Atlantic coast, British warships are bombarding and blockading towns and cities. Conditions and morale at General Washington's winter camp in Morristown, New Jersey, are worse than they were at Valley Forge. In September 1780, Benedict Arnold, one of Washington's most respected commanders, defects to the other side. American loyalists to the British Crown are calling for hostilities to end. Even American patriots are growing weary of the seemingly endless conflict. With the outcome of the war uncertain, and the outcome of the outcome uncertain, no better words can describe the beginning of the 1780s than those written earlier by Thomas Paine. These are the times that try men's souls. In May 1781, Washington sums up his situation. Instead of a glorious offensive campaign before us, we have a bewildered and gloomy defensive one. By September of '81, much to Washington's surprise, his situation has changed. 2 powerful French fleets have arrived to bolster the American cause. And General Nathaniel Greene's hit-and-run tactics are exasperating British armies in the South. That same month, Washington feigns an attack on New York City, then marches his own Continental Army plus 5,000 French soldiers south to Yorktown, Virginia. At Yorktown, 8,000 British and Hessian soldiers under the command of Lord Charles Cornwallis are entrenched and waiting. Washington's troops surround the town, and French warships blockade Chesapeake Bay. An earlier rescue attempt by the British Navy failed. Now, trapped by land and sea, Cornwallis is forced to surrender. October 19, 1781. Marching to a popular tune called "The World Turned Upside Down," His Majesty's soldiers lay down their arms. The battle at Yorktown is the last major engagement of the Revolutionary War. 2 years later, in 1783, British and American negotiators signed the Treaty of Paris. This treaty extends the United States border north to the Great Lakes, south to Florida, and west to the Mississippi River. Except for British Canada, the rest of the continent belongs to Spain. On the east coast of Spanish Florida, the Castillo de San Marcos protects the old Spanish city of St. Augustine. For more than a century, this fortress has watched over the gold and silver-laden treasure ships as they sail east by northeast along the Spanish Main. Spanish flags also fly over the old French city of New Orleans. and over other French establishments up the Mississippi River. For more than 10 years, Spain has controlled trade on the Mississippi, from St. Louis to the Gulf of Mexico. In the Southwest, in Texas and New Mexico, Spain is expanding its North American empire, using its familiar formula for conquest. First conquer, then Christianize. In California, during the 1780s, Franciscan monks, led by Father Junipero Serra, are building a chain of missions up and down the coast. For every fort constructed by soldiers, Father Serra builds a mission church. Although Spain owns all of the territory of Louisiana and claims the land between the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River, most of this vast area is inhabited by Indian tribes. In northern regions, from the Great Lakes to the Rocky Mountains, French voyageurs and English traders are stalking a small, furry animal that builds dams. Unfortunately for the beaver, hats made from beaver pelts are the fashion rage back east and in Europe. Back in 1775, Daniel Boone rounded up 30 woodsmen and hacked out a trail through the Cumberland Gap of the Appalachian Mountains and into the valley of the Ohio River. Even though it's too narrow for wagons, it's called the Wilderness Road. After the Revolutionary War, thousands of restless Americans pour through the Cumberland Gap into Kentucky and Tennessee. Once they arrive, the woods fill with the sounds of falling trees, and up goes the most common of all frontier dwellings, the log cabin. Once they've settled, food, clothing, and other necessities must come from what is close at hand. Because they are living on land that was claimed by Indian tribes, there is hostility. When Indian attacks increase, settlers seek protection by living in or near large government forts and stockades. As people living on the frontier struggle to become self-sufficient, those people living on southern plantations are beginning to prosper. After the war, exports increase and the economy expands. Southern farmers are called planters, and plantation homes are patterned after English mansions. In the southern states, climate is warm, soil fertile. Field crops are corn, rice, indigo, wheat, and tobacco. Slaves imported from Africa provide cheap labor, making large-scale farming profitable. Laid out on rivers that lead to the sea, plantations are like small towns in the country. They support every stage of production from planting to shipping. In the 1780s, 8 out of 10 workers are involved in agriculture. Yet there is a big difference between southern plantations and the hard-scrabble farms of New England. Here the land is hilly and rocky, the climate harsh. For the most part, it is subsistence farming. On the New England seacoast, most people are engaged in fishing or shipbuilding. The middle states have both farms and industry. The soil is fertile. The land is hilly, but not steep. There are small farms and large farms that do not rely on slave labor. Also, Americans are becoming aware of their untapped resources. Powered by water and fired by charcoal, iron forges dot the countryside. Hardwood forests, limestone, and deposits of iron ore. The abundance of these raw materials makes iron production a leading industry in Pennsylvania and parts of New York. Yet for the 13 states, along with differences, there are similarities. Artificial light comes from candles. Wood fires cook meals and heat homes. Fireplaces are a sign of wealth. Larger and more expensive homes have more fireplaces. This is a period of urban growth. In spite of the damage done during the war, 5 great cities are on the rise: Boston, Philadelphia, New York, Charleston, and Baltimore. Manufacturing, stimulated by the war, continues to grow, and workers not involved in agriculture learn a skilled craft or trade. The apothecary shop is the doctor's office. Outside, doctors grow herbs for medicine. Inside, their instruments look like carpenter's tools. Bloodletting is a common practice, and leeches are used to suck out bad blood. In the 1780s, people are beginning to heed Thomas Jefferson's warning: a nation that is ignorant and free has never been and will never be. There are the older colleges like Harvard, established 1636, William and Mary, 1693. But after the war, new colleges begin to spring up everywhere. Most are church-related, but some are established by the states. Even though most children are taught to read and write by their parents, public and private schools increase in numbers. Formal education varies greatly. In New England, Puritans establish public schools so their children can read the Bible. Each school year lasts 2 or 3 months. Although boys and girls are educated separately, the curriculum is the same for both. In the South, wealthy tradesmen and landowners have tutors. or send their boys to private academies. Girls are taught domestic activities in the home. In 1783, after the war is over, George Washington comes home to Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon is the place he loves best. He prefers farming to soldiering. He prefers farming to politics. Content but concerned, he keeps a wary eye to the future. With our fate will the destiny of unborn millions be involved. The 13 loosely united states had fought both together and separately. They had thrown off the chains of monarchy, and they are now enjoying the heady air of victory and freedom. Yet sooner or later, the inevitable question will come. What do we do next? There are nearly 4 million people who will need to be governed. Somehow, some way. The Articles of Confederation, ratified in 1781, is a makeshift constitution. Hastily put together at the onset of the war, it was careful not to offend any state for fear that state might withdraw. During its brief tenure, however, the Confederation Congress does convince most eastern states to give up their western land claims. In 1785, it passes a land ordinance which requires western townships to set aside one section of land for the support of education. And in 1787, it enacts the Northwest Ordinance, which provides for the government of territories and outlines the steps by which these territories would become new states. But the Confederation Congress doesn't have the power to levy taxes. It cannot maintain an army, and it cannot regulate shipping and commerce. And to make matters worse, each state has its own constitution, its own government, and its own currency. In short, the Confederation Congress cannot bind the nation together, a nation that is separated not only by the selfish interests of each state, but also by time and distance. In the 1780s, roads and transportation are woefully inadequate. Stagecoaches and wagons lumber over dirt roads that frequently turn into mud. Few bridges exist. Most streams and rivers are crossed either by ferry or by fording. It can take days, even weeks if the weather is bad, to travel between New York and Boston. To save time and toil, most people take the sea route between coastal cities. In 1787, when the first Constitutional Convention is held in Philadelphia, the New Hampshire delegates take the land route and arrive 2 months late. The convention meets in Independence Hall, in the same building and in the same room where the Declaration of Independence was signed 11 years earlier. The convention has been called amidst both agreement and protest. In contrast to some statesmen who are demanding that nothing be done to limit states' rights, George Washington wonders whether the revolution has been worth all the blood and effort. We are either a united people under one head, or we are 13 independent sovereignties eternally counteracting each other. Every state except Rhode Island is represented. But delegates are cautioned that they are coming together only to revise the Articles of Confederation. However, from the beginning, there are signs that something extraordinary is taking place. All meetings are held in strict secrecy. Visitors are not allowed. Windows are sealed. And in front of the delegates' lodgings, dirt is spread over the cobblestones to soften the noise of pounding hooves and clanking wheels. After George Washington is elected president of the convention, James Madison tactfully reminds the delegates, if all men were virtuous, there would be no need for governments. Then steers the delegates in the direction of a new national government. He proposes a plan that calls for a government divided into 3 co-equal branches: executive, judicial, and legislative, each calculated to check and balance the others. The plan survives 3.5 months of bitter debate. The biggest stumbling block is how each state will be represented in Congress. If it is only by population, then the states with fewer people are at a disadvantage. Also, since slaves are considered property, 1/3 of the people living in the southern states will not count as population. Finally, a compromise is reached. Seats in the House of Representatives will be allotted according to each state's population. In the Senate, however, each state, regardless of population, will have 2 seats. Each slave will be counted as 3/5 of a person. 39 of the 55 delegates sign the finished document, then hurry home to push for ratification. On June 21, 1788, New Hampshire becomes the 9th and deciding state to ratify the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. But there is still something lacking. Nothing was included to safeguard the rights of the individual against the tyranny of government. Within 4 years, 10 amendments are added to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. The Founding Fathers called the new government their Republican experiment. There is no guarantee that it will work, no guarantee that it will last. Some see in it the seeds of monarchy. Others fear the federal government has been too restrictive. When asked his opinion of the Constitution, Benjamin Franklin, now in his 80s, replies, "I consent to this Constitution because I expect no better, and because I am not sure that it is not the best." By unanimous vote of the Electoral College, George Washington is elected first President of the United States. April 30, 1789, New York City. On the balcony of Federal Hall, Washington takes the oath of office and offers these words to a jubilant crowd: "Integrity and firmness is all that I can promise." Now, as president, he cannot escape the responsibilities of leadership, nor can he escape his own concern for the future. With our fate, will the destiny of unborn millions be involved?